was asked to talk about EPUB, the idea which was developed 3 years ago. But I would like to very briefly say a few words about the Theatre Confrontations Festival. This is the festival which will have 18th edition this year. We always try to follow the changes in the theatre. The festival starts at the presentation of mostly fringe groups, but then slightly change. We follow also the social changes and the demographic changes in the city, thanks to the quite a big minority of Belarusians and Ukrainians in Lublin. In the time of the festival, we start to focus more to the east. The first idea of EPUB appeared on the meeting which held 2 years ago in Budapest, and Zvonko and Attila made a little bit of introduction for my presentations, because it is like this. Even if from the far it looks that post-Soviet part of post-communist part of the Europe is the same. Actually, it is much easier to people from different countries in that region talk about what's going on in a German art field or French than what we do on the both sides of the country borders. And when we start to go deeper into some topics, it easily and very fast appear that such expressions as a political theatre, as a gender approach, has totally different meaning in Poland, in Czech, in all Balkan countries, in Ukraine, and further and further. The idea of EPUB was possible thanks to the Polish presidency in EU, which was very much focused on a culture collaboration, and the conference. And the first conference and first activities from the last year was mainly focused to reach the goals of the Polish presidency, which was building the links and bridges between the European Union and the Eastern Partnership project. The Eastern Partnership is the 6 post-Soviet countries which are independent from the Soviet republics: Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia. There are 18 countries right now actively involved in the network. Basically, what stayed after the presidency the last year is that EPUB met Lublin Eastern approach, and the city council, who is very interested to build the appearance of the city of Lublin as a kind of bridge of gate between East and the West, invited this project, and we can work in the next at least 2 or 3 years to develop stronger, concrete projects about collaboration between the West and the East. And the plans for the next year is we want to establish long-term collaboration with the Rurtiennale Festival in the rural region, also focus on the education of young students coming from the performing arts, to show, to find, to figure out new way of discussing about the ideas within the performing art in the region. I would like to tell you more about one project which, with some difficulties, we tried to develop from the very beginning. This is the idea of the dictionary of the contemporary performing arts, coming back to the roots of EPUB project. We struggle huge problems on the level of the discussions about the ideas, about what contemporary theatre is about and what should be about. When we start when we try to develop the international projects within the region. This is something which will not be reached easily. We see that it needs to take time, but the next 2 or 3 years we want to focus especially on this topic through the number of sessions, through the number of educational projects, meeting young people with experienced experts, both from the Western Europe, from the Western world, from the Eastern world, from the Central Europe. We want to build the tool which might be useful not only for us, but also for the people who want to collaborate with the Central European Theatre to understand what's the story and what's the history behind us.
Theatre Pilsen International Festival Divadlo Plzeň. It's the biggest festival in the Czech Republic. In September this year, celebrated already 20 years of the festival. And the festival is traditionally focus on the best work to emerge in the given year within the geographical space of the Visegrad countries. And it also focuses on theatre from other regions, such as Slovenia and Russia. On several occasions, the festival has served as a meeting point for outstanding figures, above all thanks to its panel discussions organized in collaboration with Pen Club, which has been attended by such prominent figures as Ronald Harwood, Václav Havel or Tom Stoppard. I have left mention of the largest international showcase of stage design and theatre architecture to the end of this presentation. The Prague Quadrennial of Performance Design and Space has been held in Prague every 4 years since 1967. The main PQ event includes international meetings, symposia, exhibitions, live events, etc. In the last edition in 2011, there was more than 40,000 visitors, including artists, directors, stage designers, etc. And at the very close, we must not forget about artists in residency programs in Central Europe, in particular in the field of dance and visual arts, which are organized with the support of the International Visegrad Fund, but also in cooperation with other institutions and funds in the countries.
We're talking about cooperation in the Balkan area, even though it's still mostly non-structuralized, but we are definitely much more informed and up-to-date about what's going on in the Balkan area than, let's say, colleagues from the Scandinavian countries, for example. Now, theater life in the professional sense started in the second half of the 19th century in our parts. Most of the countries adopted the German system of the repertoire theater, and some argue that this model is still functioning very well, both artistically and productionally. What I'm saying is that in the past 200 years, some changes did happen, and you know, there are new practices that need to be supported. You know, there are still large parts of the large majority of productions are still happening in this context of naturalistic text-based theater. But even though that the new and different creative, innovative forms are being established in the independent sector. Now, the communist period brought some innovations to the area of performing arts in the Balkans with the introduction of cultural centers in the 60s and 70s. The appearance of these cultural centers opened door to new art forms, new practices, and it already then started to challenge the mainstream theaters. In those times, the doors were open to international collaborations as well. A large number of festivals were opened in that time. You know, the unique position of Yugoslavia enabled artists to meet and exchange both from East and West in Yugoslavia, which gave us quite a unique advantage. But, you know, the good times eventually ended. As you know, the 90s brought wars and the rise of nationalism to the Balkans. So, yes, communication was over. We didn't communicate inside the region anymore. For example, Slovenia wanted to separate itself from the Balkans, not only politically, but also symbolically. This was the beginning of the 90s. It was a very dynamic period. So the world changed, and this position, exclusive position of Yugoslavia was gone. And after the wars ended, the end of the 90s brought all sorts of new organizations, new cultural operators to the scene. These were mostly young people with great enthusiasm and clear vision that all worked outside of the institutional framework, and these people brought a new perspective to the professional field. And from that moment on, we can also speak about systematic presentation of experimentary theater, contemporary dance, experimentary music, and new venues like, for example, Metelkova and Pekarna in Slovenia, Rex and Center for Cultural Decontamination in Serbia, or Mama and Močvara in Croatia started to emerge with very little or no support from the local governments at all. And these organizations started to develop networks. I think we can say also thanks to those organizations and networks that Balkans weren't the black hole on the map of Europe anymore. The political system in those parts changed. We went from capitalism to, from communism to capitalism, from one-party rule to parliamentary democracy. All sorts of reforms were carried out, except in the cultural sector. That's why on one hand we still have the inert and self-sufficient public institutions that still take most of the public budgets, and on the other hand we have the dynamic new independent producers that have their own missions and visions but can't realize them due to the lack of finances. I'm not sure this situation will change for the good in the following few years, as you probably know that austerity measures are sweeping Europe, and in some countries we're facing drastic budget cuts. And this is also one of the main productional problems when it comes to possible collaboration with Asian artists. You know, the GDP and the purchasing capacity of the Balkan countries is much lower than, let's say, Europe, or if we compare to Korea, the gap is even wider. So it's difficult to bring artists to our area, and I think the question we need to answer is how to cooperate in these difficult conditions. Nevertheless, the importance of such events, the importance of the possibility for us to exchange ideas, for the presenters to come and see what artists are doing here. And I would also stress the crucial importance of the mobility of artists.
자, 그럼 일단은 세 번째 세션을 마치는 것으로 하고 세 분에게 고마움의 표시로 다시 한번 박수를 좀 부탁드립니다.